All right, guys, we're going to get into the PPE side of life. Hard hats. When we have an employee that starts, we give them a personal protective equipment kit, and it contains all kinds of things. For excavation, includes a hard hat. In the construction industry, the colors of hard hats typically mean something. For the most part, we don't really follow that here at Stepaway family of businesses. We just issue typically white hard hats to just about everybody because that's the most common color. But on any excavation, anytime somebody is in the trench or the excavator is running, or there's an opportunity to hit our head on a low branch or something like that from a tree in the front or backyard, need to wear a hard hat. OSHA in chapter 29 in section 1926, it gives us when we have to wear a hard hat. And so basically the summary is whenever there's a risk of a falling object, anytime there's a risk of an object, you're hitting your head on an object, you have to wear a hard hat. ANSI also takes over this. If you were on the toolbox talk this morning, we talked about safety glasses. ANSI is in control. Basically, they're the regulatory resource for safety glasses. They're the regulatory resource for hard hats. And so the hard hat, in order to meet the ANSI regulations, has to have the Z89.1 reference designation to it. It gives you two levels of protection. It gives you impact protection. It gives you penetration protection. If you see this symbol on the inside of your hat, here's an example of where you see this. This lets you know that it is safe to wear backwards. The labels actually mean something inside of the hard hat. This one here, it tells you the size, the general sizes that it can adjust to, that it meets the ANSI Z89.1 designation, that it's a type 1, it's a class G and E, and of course you can wear it backwards. Class 1 means it protects your head from the top. Class 2 means it protects your head from the top and the side. Here is the anatomy of the average hard hat. On each hard hat, there is a stamp, a manufacturer stamp, and you see it over here on this side. It's kind of blown up. It lets you know that that's the date of manufacture. That hard hat was manufactured in July of 2019, and in July of 2026, it expires. So all hard hats have an expiration date. MSA has 5 years. There's a couple manufacturers that will go a little bit longer. But the hard hats, they definitely need to be looked at every single day. As far as an inspection goes, you want to make sure that they're clean. You don't want to drill any holes in them. They can't be cracked, those types of things. That's typically why some of the regulatory agencies and even companies don't allow stickers on hard hats, because you can't see cracks or holes. There's a couple of nice features to make your hard hat a little bit more comfortable, like those cushions. I'll get into a couple things. You're looking for cracks, breaks, and tears in the plastic, not only in the actual shell itself, but the suspension of the hard hat. You're looking for all kinds of damage. It's important to be able to document that you've inspected your hard hat. You can do that in Service Titan. It's really easy to add a note there that you've inspected your all your PPE, you've inspected your protective system. All of those notes can be added into Service Titan really easy. One way to make your hard hat a little bit more comfortable, they have a bandana, a cushion type of bandana. They have cooling pads for the summer. Inferno even makes a head wrap that goes inside of your hard hat to make it a little bit more comfortable. Arborwear makes the sweatshirts that have the big oversized hood, if you're familiar with that it covers your head with a hard hat. Doesn't put all that pressure down on your neck. You have different pads. So it's important, again, to wear your hard hat anytime there's an opportunity for your head to get struck on the top or on the sides. Safety glasses, we issue 3 types of safety glasses. Since I addressed this this morning on our toolbox talk, I'll blitz through it. But the reality is one of our biggest weaknesses as an enterprise that we get on people for is safety glasses. So we provide safety glasses, we provide safety goggles, we provide face shields for restoration, excavation, and our service technicians. They get all 3 of those. So if you don't have it, please let me know. My phone number is 330-488-4141. If you took a picture of module 2, the QR code there, you should have my information. As the PPE gets worn, we'll issue you a new one. Bring us the worn equipment, we'll issue you a new one. ANSI sets the standards for eyeglasses. Safety glasses are designed to protect you from impacts.
It was $5,506.23.
They also protect your eyes from debris. You need to wear safety glasses when you're cutting pipe, when there's a risk of flying debris, when there's a risk of vapors, when there's a risk of liquids. You need to wear your protection whenever there's a hazard. So you guys are cutting concrete. It's important to know that when you're using the saw, that as you're cutting the concrete, you either have to spray the concrete or hook a water hose up to the saw so that it goes through the machine. Our first excavation here in Allentown, we had to use a hand sprayer, but you can never cut concrete dry, even in a basement of a house. Cutting clay tile is a hazard. Beveling your pipe is a hazard. Cabling a drain is a hazard. And you have to use eye protection just to keep your eyes, safe. You just never know. Hand protection, it goes all the way back to the 8th century. Before the Romans, we typically think of that. But hand safety is the practice of taking precautions to protect your hands from injuries or hazards. Here's why it's important. By the numbers, injuries to your extremities, your hands and your feet, decrease your earning potential for the life of your career by 20%. And workers' comp isn't a great system to protect your income in the future, but practicing good safety for your extremities, your feet, wearing right footwear and gloves is what's going to help you maximize your earning potential for your entire career, whether you're at Roto-Rooter or not. You're constantly using your hands, they're taking a beating every day, and they're exposed to many kinds of hazards. 43% of all hand injuries are causes for days away from work. 71% of all hand injuries are preventable. 100% of our recorded hand injuries last year were from people who were not wearing gloves. Here's a monstrous splinter from the restoration guy moving drywall down. They cut the bottom 4 feet of drywall, and as they were pulling it down, the guy didn't wear his gloves, and he ran it up against a splintered 2x4, and he got that in his finger. Risk to your hands, lacerations. The problem is what the stuff that we're working with on the plumbing side of life, it's so soiled. You just don't even know what's in there. It's good for you guys to wear the nitrile gloves, even when you're connecting a Fernco to an existing pipe, to keep your hands clear for whatever is coming out of that main line. We give you work gloves, we give you nitrile gloves, we give you cut resistant gloves, those types of things. Nitrile is a synthetic rubber. It's designed to protect your hands from liquids, some solids. If you're working with something heat related, you definitely want to wear work gloves. We want to make sure that they're the right size. Typically 7.5 to 9.5 is the sweet spot for most people. If the gloves are too tight, it's not safe. If they're too loose, it's not safe. Work gloves are used to protect your fingers and your hands from pinch points, rough objects, and even some mild burns. We provide you with cut-resistant gloves. That material reduces the friction by a utility knife, a pocket knife, those types of things. The material stretches. It has a little extra hardness. The material is designed to roll so that the friction isn't able to be applied and cut your skin. That's why we get those. Again, we want to make sure that the gloves are fitting you. If they do not fit, it's not good. If you're concerned about the size of the gloves, you can use a tape measure, wrap it around the palm like in this illustration here seen above. Let me know what size that is, and we'll make sure that we get them to you. Once your equipment goes through some good wear and tear, bring them to us so we can get you new PPE. That is our responsibility and privilege to be able to make sure we provide that with you. Make sure you're taking good care of your equipment also. Not just the Roto-Rooter stuff, but even your personal things. They'll last longer if you take care of them. Make sure your gloves are washed and dried regularly. Let them sit out to dry. In the open air is good. Try not to expose them to too much sunlight. But your gloves are not going to do you any good if you're not wearing them. Hearing protection. Just being able to hear is incredible. I have lost quite a bit of hearing from the fire service back in the day when I was in. Not a whole lot of emphasis was placed on hearing protection, and I regret that every day due to my own stupidity. Constantly asking, what did you say? It's embarrassing most times, so make sure you wear it. There's a really good app that you can get on your phone if you're not sure if you need to wear it and you're a detail person. It's called Decibel X. It's a really good application that measures the sound around you. This is what it looks like. I actually have this on my phone and use it quite a bit here at work. Some of the challenges with hearing, I don't want to call it disabilities, but hearing loss is it produces irritability. It reduces communication efficiency. It can increase stress because you're always having to say, what? It can cause a loss of sleep. It contributes to a difficulty of being able to concentrate, even fatigue. I get from time to time the ringing in the ears. For whatever reason, it's pretty annoying. So we provide you with two different types of hearing protection. Pushing the grass, pushing the mower, rather, the lawnmower, is 90 decibels. 93 for a belt sander, 110 for a jackhammer with a door closed in the other room. And so with the hearing protection, we ask that if you're jackhammering a basement, that you put the ear foam plugs in and then cover that, your ears and the plugs, with the ear muffs. We provide both of those. The hearing plugs, we know that they're a one and done, disposable. When I buy the PPE kits as I travel around, I'll get the packs, and I know that they're going to get burned up. Make sure you let your general manager know, hey, I'm about out of hearing protection. I'd like to get some more the next time I come in, next week, tomorrow, whatever. We provide all this stuff, all the PPE to you at no cost, and we'll replace it as necessary. These are the foam plugs that we provide. I think these are a little bit more comfortable than those. When I was in the Army, we used green ones like that, and they absolutely sucked. So the way to insert the hearing protection, the foam plugs, is to grab the top of your ear, pull up on it, twist those foam plugs, insert them, maybe a quarter turn, and let them expand. Using the earmuffs, you just place them over your head. Again, jackhammering inside is a must, that you must wear double hearing protection. Hand tools, knowing how to use them safely is really important. The reality is that working with hand tools, they're sharp. They may have abrasive blades. There's risks to tools falling into the excavation, particles of the tool or the material we're cutting or grinding, flying, splashing, cutting concrete, that hazardous dust, the silica, those types of things. It's important to take the tools that you're using in a safe manner so that avoid getting yourself hurt. Make sure you're wearing all the PPE when you're using these hand tools, making sure your tools are kept clean, making sure that the blades are sharp, making sure that they are in proper operation. You're using the machine guards. One of the common things that I see in the field that have to be corrected is the machine guards are taken off because some of the underground specialists are using a 4-inch angle grinder instead of a 6-inch, or they're failing to dig all the way around the pipe that they're trying to cut so that they can basically score that pipe. I'm talking about the clay pipe, scoring it and breaking it. Never remove one of those guards, circular saw, bandsaw, and the angle grinder. If you look at the owner's manual for each of those, they require leaving the guards on. We want to, again, make sure you're wearing the right kind of PPE. Use the right tool for the right job. When you're using a utility knife, make sure you're wearing your cut-resistant gloves. You're using a pocket knife, maybe you're cutting banding, opening a box, getting the fern cones out, whatever it is. On electrical hazards, for the most part, what I see in the field is battery-powered hand tools. Make sure if you're changing the blade, you disconnect the battery. If it's an extension cord powered hand tool, make sure that power source is disconnected before changing the blade. We want to make sure that if your finger accidentally hits in the right way, that it has no energy and you're not going to be at risk for cutting. Power tools are great if they're used properly. Let's see here. One of the things too that's important to remember when you're using power tools, you want to make sure that it gets up to the right speed before you start to use them. For example, an angle grinder, before it gets up to the right speed, has a greater risk of breaking the blade and objects going flying. I think it was about 2 years ago, there was a guy who his angle grinder, the abrasive wheel broke because he pulled the trigger, started to throw it on the pipe, and the torque wasn't building up the momentum in enough time that it actually caused the blade to break, and half of his abrasive wheel went right into his cheek. Absolutely awful. And it ended up working out fine after that, but I don't want to deal with a abrasive blade in your cheek or mine. So make sure you're wearing the right stuff and let me get up to speed. All right, so that closes out that. You guys have any questions on that?
Nope.
We're getting there, guys. That's wrong. All right, the speed shoring itself, it's a pretty simple system. These are made in Houston, Texas. This graduated gauge here tells us when it's acceptable to allow somebody to get into a trench. So the tabulated data tells us that the hand pump, it needs to be at the 750 PSI marking in order to send somebody into the trench. For us to consider that trench, those speed struts as safe, it needs to be at least 750. I prefer it to be 1,000 because for the competent person who's going to circle the excavation like a shark, looking for integrity issues in the trench walls, it's easier for my mind's eye to navigate towards 12 o'clock, which is where 1,000 is. Anywhere around that versus 1030, where 750 PSI is on that graduated gauge. Again, the requirement is a minimum of 750. I prefer 1,000. It just makes it easier. What I typically do when I show up to an excavation, I take a picture of wherever that needle is. I wait 5 or 10 minutes later, and I compare where that needle is to where it was 5 or 10 minutes earlier. I'm curious if there's a small leak that may need addressed in the maintenance side of life. Does it need an extra hand pump to keep it safe while we have somebody in the trench? Those are some observations that I make. On the hand pump, you have the release valve in the section that it's on right now. In this photo, it's in the release. If you turn this counterclockwise, that is how it builds up pressure. We'll skip this since we watched it already. This is a test question. Finform boards, 3,600 PSI. We'll review the test here after a little bit, just make sure you understand all the questions. You can permanently mount the Finform boards to speed struts. Because of the diversity of the scope of work that we do at Stepaway, it doesn't make any sense, but you can make, in a sense, a trench box by permanently affixing the struts to the Finform boards. You can use them for horizontal shoring. You can use them for vertical shoring. Just because the regulations say that you have to use it at 5 feet and more, doesn't mean that it might not be beneficial to use it in 3 feet, especially if your soil is all sandy and you just can't seem to get ahead of it. That's definitely something to consider. Here's a quick video on removing it.
All right, procedures for hydraulic struts. As you noticed before, when you install hydraulic struts, they get installed bottom strut first, middle strut, top strut, etc. When you remove the struts, it's done in reverse order. We start with the top strut, middle strut, bottom strut. We'll remove this first strut here with the hose off. You can see we have our installation tool. It hooks underneath the top ring here. This goes over the top of the valve, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to depress that one-way valve. It's going to release the pressure into the strut itself. It's going to collapse, and then we're going to pull it out using the ropes and our installation tool. When you do this, fluid is expelled from this valve. So you want to be very careful around it. You don't want to get this stuff, get all messed up, get all over your face or whatnot. All right, we'll remove our line strut with the hose attached. This is the preferred method to do it. You conserve your fluid. It makes it a lot cleaner inside the trench. It's a lot more control. One thing you do want to make sure you do is control these panels from top side, of course, because when you release this strut in a collapse situation, these panels are going to want to come in on each other. So you're going to have full control of these panels. We need one guy on each one ropes of the strut, and we need one guy on each set of the panels. To release this strut, very simply, you just need to take a control valve on top of your pump, turn it to release. The strut will release the pressure, and we'll release the strut from these throttle valves. Release pressure. Release strut does not fully release, all you need to do is take your panels, push them in on each other, that will collapse the strut and it can be removed.
You can use the rope. You can use 550 cord. I prefer that you use that hook release tool. You should have 2 for every excavation team. All of the protective systems all have to be installed from outside the trench. Let's see here. This video is not playing. This is the second time I noticed that. So let's go through this here together. Know your numbers. So at 18 inches, we'll start at the smallest measurement and work our way to the biggest. Now, these are all test questions. So at 18 inches, that's how high the fin form board must be above grade if there's a risk of things falling inside the trench. So 18 inches, the fin form must be above grade. 2 feet. You can lift the fin form board out of the trench a maximum of 2 feet if there's no compromise in the trench wall. 2 feet. 2 feet is the minimum distance the spoil pile must be away from the excavation, the trench. It's better that you do it at 4 feet. Less weight on the walls, but the requirements are a minimum of 2 feet. 3 feet is the amount of distance that the ladder must extend out of the excavation. Remember, 3 feet does not equal 3 rungs because that top rung is much closer to the top of the end of the ladder than the other rungs on that ladder. So 4 ladder rungs is a much better way to go. At 4 feet, your trench needs to have a means of egress. We typically use the ladder. The ladder needs to be in the trench. Even if you don't have protective system, your trench is 4 feet deep. You don't need one. I'm not saying that the soil condition might not warrant it for you to try to be as efficient as possible. But at 4 feet, you need to have a ladder in that trench. At 5 feet, you need to make sure that we are using a protective system, whether it's the speed shoring or the trench box. Those are some of the measurements there. If your excavation is 20 feet deep or more, we're not doing it. Usually 15 feet is the cutoff because it goes outside the business model that we have for the excavation business unit in your branch. We're not used to it. If there's an excavation that's 13 feet deep or more, I want to know about it so that I can help review the scope of the job to make sure that I'm working with the general manager, your field supervisor, to make sure you guys are getting everything that you need. At 25 feet, there needs to be a means of egress within all of the people inside that trench. And that means of egress is the ladder. So you can remember that. We'll review that when we get to the test, those test questions. You can use the speed shoring in long applications. This kind of looks like a football obstacle course, over under kind of stuff. I'm not sure what the value is, but here's a very long application.
A Nick in the early UFU. I believe so. Yeah.
We're gonna skip through some of this here once I share it.
So we're going
All right. A competent person must be aware of access and egress, water accumulation, hazardous atmosphere, all of the above. We classify soils as C
Yeah.
because it's been previously excavated and it requires the highest level of safety. But the four main types of classification is A, B, C, and stable rock. This is not part of the test, but this is for a different part of the class. Here's an example of a guy who was buried up to his hips. It took rescuers 4 hours to get him out. It takes a long time for them to deploy, to get on site, to get their equipment out. And man, a collapse is just nothing to play around with. Here's a guy up to his knees. The rescuers are got there. I haven't even started digging him out yet, and he's completely immobilized. We could say easily that, oh, it was good that he didn't get buried up to his chest, but the reality is the way that the soil falls in and surrounds the body parts, it cuts off the circulation. And if you don't have blood flowing to your toes, your feet, your legs in minutes, your body goes through necrosis, and the skin, the tissue itself, and the muscles begin to decay really fast. Sometimes you can heal up from it, but 4 hours without blood flowing, you're going to have permanent damage. And so it's just nothing to play around with. We talked about the volume of soil, how heavy that it weighs. Imagine a Volkswagen coming down on you. This is damage to a ladder from a trench collapse. Here's the top 5 trending hazards for excavations. Here's a fatality. Guy, they were running pipe overhead. They had somebody in the trench. Not a good idea. The rigging broke and fell on the guy's head. He was wearing a hard hat, but it broke his neck.
Yeah.
You can't see in this photo here, but I like to encourage the operators to wear their seatbelt. There's been a number of times that I've been on a job, and when we're trying to take a big scoop of dirt, it can actually cause the excavator to move close to the trench. I've seen it a couple of times. The owner's manual for that says you must have your seatbelt on. This guy, there was a seatbelt. He did not have it on. He was inside on top of the tractor, sitting in the seat. Tractor went into the excavation, and because he didn't wear a seatbelt, he actually fell inside the trench and was buried. So that's a mess. Here's a concrete mixer that fell inside an excavation. Something to be careful of if you're digging in a street and you have a semi delivering crushed concrete. Make sure they stay back far enough away from the trench, even though you might not have somebody in there. Let's just say you're backfilling. That weight of that semi truck on an unprotected wall can cause your whole excavation to collapse, and it's just a cluster to start all over. There's a couple of problems with this. Of course, we have all these photos come from Chicago. This guy here is in the trench. He has a hard hat on, but the bucket is sitting right there. The excavator is so close to the edge. They're running a trash pump, and it's just a big hot mess. No protective system here at all. Air oxygen monitoring. We provide 4 gas meters when you suspect the air has been compromised. If you're running a trash pump and you have made sure that the exhaust is blowing away, it would be good to have the 4 gas meter on your job site. Typically, there's one at every branch. And so if you know your excavation is going to have some water in it, you know you're going to have some gas-powered equipment, I would snag that. Make sure that the air is safe to work in, and continue on. This one here, this trash pump, the exhaust was pointing towards the excavation. You see the guys are using plywood to try to keep the yard as nice as possible. We never use the house as bracing. Believe it or not, I don't know if I have the picture in this slide deck or not, but we damaged a bay window by bracing up against it to do an excavation. It's just not a good move.
I said something.
Here's a guy buried up to his knees, no protective system. This is I don't know if it's law enforcement or fire service, but completely underneath the house. Look at the bricks. This definitely has all kinds of issues, and how we as people don't see that as dangerous is just mind-boggling. Also, here's an excavation. You have the excavator straddling it. No protective system, clearly deeper than 5 feet. It's pretty remarkable. So what do you see that's good about this excavation, and what do you see that's not so good? What do you say, Logan?
Well, what's good is they already got one trench box in there, kind of separating the walls, but kind
Yeah.
of looks like the owns might be too close to the excavation site for the road work. I would probably close off that entire road if it was that big.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sometimes the municipalities will fight to close a road. I don't know why. There's some unwritten rule with superintendents, highway superintendents, about closing roads, especially if it's a thoroughfare. I had to present a case to a city in Ohio because we were digging in the street. We actually dug across the whole street, and they wanted us to close 1 lane down per day. And I had to argue that the loads of the big trucks driving by and their speed was just too dangerous.
I say there's just
So
not enough room over by that cone for any kind of vehicle to get through there without shaking up or possibly caving in on the side of the wall.
yeah, for sure.
Get my place.
When we install protective system or trench boxes, I don't want anybody in the hole. Everybody needs to be out. What's good is the ladder. You see the 4 rungs there. That just makes it so much easier to get in and out of the excavation. It's best if you can secure the ladder to the fin form boards or the trench box, just to eliminate it from moving, or somebody can hold the ladder where our guys are getting in and out of that hole. This is a fatal trench collapse. They have a trench box. I don't know if they're trying to slope this, but this is C soil, which you can slope. But this was a complete disaster. This is nowhere near big enough. And we make mistakes like this all the time. This is a soup sandwich. We don't do any timber shoring. Again, this is all in Chicago. But that is an absolute soup sandwich. Here's a trench box that has been abused. And there's no way that before they put this in the street that they said that they actually inspected it and the integrity of the trench box was safe. No way.
Your dating, yes.
Some of the challenges here on this, they're putting a trench box in, but notice the bottom, the feet of this, how they kind of like form a chisel, and you have the weight of the trench box. This is nowhere near stable. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And the distance that the trench box is hovering over this trench is not safe either. This is too small. It's not even really practical.
The doll. The doll is a big doll.
Here's what soil fissuring looks like. This makes it look very, very risky. Way too much water. Water in a trench makes it so dangerous, and especially with C-type soils. Man, oh man, just nothing to mess around with, no shortcuts whatsoever. We talked a little bit about soil classification. If you ever get the opportunity to take the OSHA 3015 class, it is really good training if this is something that you want to do for a long period of time. Let's see here. All right, that's going to be it for this one. Let's take about 10 minutes and we'll come back here at 1 o'clock. We're going to review the test and then I'll have you take the test. All right. All right. So I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.
Well. I'm gonna get over here and. Right. Uh-oh. Step in the other one. This shit. Uploaded it. We need not send this yet. Upload to me. Once I get the final report, now they send it to me in this. Until. Yeah. Yeah. That- That's what I'm pulling up now. So. That's what I put that in. Oh, I get it. Down 150 east, Korea. Indiana on here. Something. John and Jackie Williams at JAQK. John. Yeah, they don't have any of those. Hey. Good night on the record. So. So yeah, I might be want to see you no. Yes. What we say now. See, you going. Whatever I just said. That's fucking stupid. You looking at me like I am. Got it. Jack. Back to her. Her race, it was a little pan. Back in the fifth. Okay. December. Yeah. Hey. Down there and she's paid for. Oh, yeah, well. All right. No problem. You see. Here's one mayor, and I got a message about You were wondering something about your bill? Funded $1,467.41. Credit to. See what I can find out with names, best neighbors. I will call you back and let you know what's going on. Thank you. Bye. No, I'm not scared to shit on me. Hold on. Busted through the door. Oh.
Not the police, they're alright. If I could just get this thing pulled back.
Nothing worked right that day. Paul Janicek and his crew moved steel pilings in North Dakota. As I was walking behind the crane, I had heavy leather gloves on. I was guiding the steel to try to keep it from swinging. The crew often worked on job sites near power lines, but on this day, no one was paying attention to what lurked just overhead. We're going to be a man short the day of the accident. With the foreman out, they didn't have a dedicated spotter, so no one noticed as the crane approached the overhead power line. I tried taking my hand off of the seal, and for about 2 or 3 seconds, I saw a blue arc about a ½ inch in diameter between my thumb and the steel sheet. And that's the last I remember. I regained consciousness, laying on the ground. Paul was seriously burned, and years later, Paul's injuries are still a part of his life. Don't let what happened to Paul happen to you or your crew. Operating heavy equipment is dangerous enough. Operating it around overhead power lines can be a real killer without the right training. I'm Bill Shields. Whatever type of equipment you use, this program will show you how to keep yourself and your crew safe around overhead power lines. Overhead power lines are so common that most of us just don't notice them. When you work with heavy equipment, your life depends on power line awareness and safety training. You can hit a power line while performing many common tasks, such as using a bucket truck, backhoe, or crane. Even while working with a dump truck, bulldozer, pump truck, or similar equipment. It's important to understand that every piece of equipment you've just seen can touch a power line. So you have good reason to be careful when operating any kind of heavy equipment. And if you're not careful, here's what could happen.
A train burst into flames this afternoon after hitting a power line. Driver narrowly escaped injury. The area was evacuated while firefighters brought the blaze under control.
Even the lowest voltage power lines carry deadly amounts of electricity. This includes distribution lines, service drops, and temporary power lines at job sites. Though some lines like this one appear to be insulated, this will not protect you against electric shock. Distance is your only reliable protection from power lines. That's why OSHA requires that you keep yourself and your equipment at least 10 feet from all overhead lines of 50,000 volts or less. Higher voltages require greater clearances. After training, planning smart is your next line of defense against power line contacts. With a piece of equipment like we were working with, it should have been a pre-site investigation. It should have been checked ahead of time. Had Genesec's crew scouted the site, they could have easily avoided the line. Always visit the site well before the job begins to identify the location of all overhead lines. Then call the local electric utility to ask about voltages and safe working distances. And allow enough time in the job estimate for the utility to respond. And during the inspection, mark a safety boundary parallel to overhead lines and at least 10 feet away, following OSHA safety rules. If you must work closer than 10 feet, contact the local utility well in advance. They'll make arrangements to help you work safely. Safety doesn't end with planning. Working smart also means following safety rules and regulations. Work as a team, check the site daily, and point out hazards to everyone on the job site. Remind them to look out for one another. Your team should always include a dedicated spotter. Remember, on Paul's crew, the foreman functioned as the spotter, but he was out the day of the accident. I guess the real reason for the accident would be that we were lacking the foreman who would have been knowledgeable in what to look for. The spotter should have time to inspect the site and identify all lines in and around the work area. The spotter should always be on the ground, never on the equipment. It's easier to accurately judge distances from the ground. And remember the safety boundary we marked earlier? It gives the spotter another visual point of reference. No equipment, load, or personnel should ever cross that boundary. Steady swing. Keep swinging. Never have the spotter doing double duty like guiding a load. The spotter's only responsibility should be staying in contact with the operator to prevent a power line hit. So what should you do if, despite your best efforts, your equipment hits an overhead power line? If you cannot move the equipment safely off the line, stay where you are. Never attempt to touch or move the power line.
Well, are you okay? Stay back.
You must warn people on the ground to stay away. They are in the greatest danger of shock. Call the electric utility and remain on the equipment until utility personnel, and only utility personnel, say it is safe to get off. If there's imminent danger, like a possible explosion or fire, people on the equipment will need to get away. They must jump off and away from the equipment with arms crossed and both feet together, making sure not to touch the equipment and the ground at the same time. Once off, they should shuffle away for at least 20 yards. And if someone is injured, always call 911 immediately. And stay away from anyone or anything that is still in contact with a power line so you don't become another victim. Let's review the key safety practices for preventing power line hits. Train every worker on the job site. Make sure they know about power line risks, clearances, and safety practices. Plan every job. Allow enough time to scout the area, contact the local utility, and mark a safety boundary of at least 10 feet. And work safely. Recheck the job site daily for any new hazards. Use a dedicated spotter and, if an emergency happens, carefully follow safety procedures. For Paul Janicek, his crew's failure to follow basic safety practices cost him a long and painful recovery. One thing I learned from my experience being injured is that if you're going to be working with equipment like a crane, and you have to have a full crew, you have to have precautions. The crew should not move unless you're 100% sure that the hazard's taken care of. Everybody knows about it. Everybody.
Because we work around so many utility lines, the gas line is just as dangerous in the ground too, you know. All right, so pull out your quiz, your test here. I'm going to review these questions, make sure we're all on the same page. Let's see here. All right, question number 1. A competent person must be able to, what? There's 5 choices there. I have explained that. Question number 2.
Do we answer them?
No, you'll answer them. Good question. You'll answer them on your own. I'll give you a few minutes to take the test here after the end of the review. Do you guys have any questions before I start?
I got one or
Go ahead.
two.
Hit me.
I gotta find it first.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, question 31 on this. It says what is the definition of short-term exposure? Is that meaning towards what we do at work, or is that
That's a good question, and thank you for bringing that up because I did not address that. So short-term exposure is any time less than 24 hours that an excavation is open. So the question is, what is the definition of short-term exposure? The correct answer is a period of time less than 24 hours that an excavation is open.
And then I had a question also.
Yes, sir.
If you want to look at number 42,
Yep. Okay.
I
Question
understand that.
42 is, what is plastic regarding soil? That is it's something I did not address either. But it is the property of the soil that allows it to be deformed or molded without cracking. So plastic just means moldable, more with A, soil, less likely with B, and certainly not with C. So that's question 42.
And did you do 41 as well? I mean, did you get over 41?
41, the two sections of the end of day form that need to be completed. That's the job site description and the overnight. If we're going to leave that open. Give me 1 second here, guys. I got to respond to this here. Okay. What else do you guys have?
Honestly, that was the only ones I couldn't understand or didn't remember.
All right. Well, we'll cut off a little bit of time here. Go ahead and take a few minutes here and go ahead and answer those questions. Let me know when you guys are both done.
Oh, there was one more. If the excavation's 20 feet deep, he said that we just don't do it, but it's not on the test as that. It's we gotta
Yeah.
get a engineer of some sort.
Yes. So the answer, that was question 20.
It's 11.
Question 11 says, if an excavation is 20 feet deep, the shoring must be designed by who? That is going to be a professional engineer has to do that according to OSHA standards.
Okay. Oh. I'm finished with mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Both you guys are finished with yours?
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure your names are legible on the back. That last page, I think, is where the name goes.
Yep.
Make sure you sign the attendance sheet. You can turn that test and the attendance sheet into Corey.
Yep.
And Corey can get it over to John or Frankie or something like that. I just need to get it. And then I'll get it. I'll grade it on Friday. And you just need a 80% or higher to pass. And even though we spent 3.5 hours or so together, I don't expect you to remember everything. That's why we made sure we gave you our phone numbers if you have any questions. I don't keep bankers' hours. Use me as a resource. I want to be able to help you guys make better decisions together. So, and be safe out there.
We'll do.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
You're not.